Hello, in this tutorial we will look at users and privileges, how to install a new user, the possible architectures available in Firebird for this, and the various ways of allocating privileges. This user, or each user who can log into a database, is registered on the database server for all available databases. We can see here that both our databases are on the same server instance, localhost, and the usernames and passwords with which you can log into the database server are stored in a security file. Here we are in the main Firebird directory, the main directory of the instance that we are currently working with. Here you can see the file called security2.fdb. In this database you can find all usernames and passwords for all databases using this server version. The database is protected internally so that it is not possible to work on it directly during runtime. IBExpert offers the User Manager. The User Manager provides the possibility to create and administrate users in the database so that they can log in and work on it. So, I will add a user, test, and I shall specify the password, also test. First name, John. Middle name, T. Last name, test. A description as well as a user ID and group ID can also be specified if wished. So I'll simply confirm my new user test with the password test, adding a role. Here I can, for example, define a role for the sales department and specify that my test user is a member of the sales role. G is for granted. AO is for with admin option, which means that the user can pass his privileges on to other users. Here you can look at it the other way round and see which roles have which users. The contents are the same. It is purely a matter of choice which display type you prefer. So, each user can be given his own database login. The employee database automatically has certain rights which can be administrated in the IBExpert Grant Manager. When I open the Grant Manager, I can grant rights that the user may have on this database. You can see here the user public, a virtual user. Any users that I may create for this database automatically receive all the rights that this virtual public user has. If the public user has all rights on all objects, then any newly created users will also receive these rights. To illustrate this, I will revoke all of public users' rights. In the IBExpert Grant Manager, we can view the privileges for an object horizontally, with the grant admin option, and here, for example, all select privileges for all objects. Again here with the grant admin option, or grant all privileges, or revoke all privileges, which is what I will do here. The user public has no privileges any longer. The user sysdba created the database, so he continues to enjoy all privileges. To be sure, I can click the Grant All to All button, and the user test is given select rights on the country table. And now I can take another look at the roles. The sales role is granted privileges to the sales table, so that my user test can now access the country table with his user rights and read the sales table with his role privileges. Everything is specified by simple point and click in IBExpert and automatically stored as specified in the database server's security database. Now I'll disconnect from the database and take a copy of this database registration so that I can take a look at the database as the user test. So, test, then test, and here we have the role sales, so that we know that we are using this user and this role. I will enter dev test as the alias name. And when I now connect to the database and open the table customer, and try to take a look at the data, I receive an error message that this is not allowed, which is quite correct, as my test user does not have any rights on the customer table. He does, however, have privileges on the country table, although he is not allowed to make any changes to any of the datasets because he only has reading privileges and not writing privileges. And these error messages that result from such violations will of course need to be formulated somewhat more eloquently in the end user's application. In IBExpert, it is important to see the original Firebird error messages. In the sales table, the test user also only has reading privileges. When I attempt to alter the entry paid from no to yes and then try to save this, I also receive an error message that I am not permitted to do this, as I have no privileges to write anything into the customer table. So, that is in principle Firebird authorizations. I will now go back to the user sysdba, who is the registered user for the development database. Logged in as sysdba, we can grant rights to users using the IBExpert Grant Manager. The Grant Manager is a component of the IBExpert fully registered version. It is unfortunately not included in the IBExpert Personal Edition. You can use it to quickly and simply grant privileges for users and roles. At table level, you can even grant rights for individual columns. For example, I will grant my test user reading privileges for the whole customer table, but he may only update this field on hold. So he may not make any alterations to any part of this table apart from this field. So, it is possible to grant privileges on each database object to a high level of detail for users and also for roles, which simplifies administration in the long term considerably. If you have 10 different departments with 200 employees using your application, it is much simpler to create 10 or so different roles instead of 200 different user profiles. Individual user privileges may still be granted in addition to the role privileges. You may even grant privileges for views, so that each view has its own privileges. And you can grant rights for triggers and procedures. This makes sense when you do not wish individual users to have data manipulation privileges. You can simply allow the procedures to manipulate data. The table itself can be hidden from the end user, as only the procedure has access to it. Firebird's privilege system is extremely refined, allowing you to secure and manage even extremely complex situations. Unfortunately, the reality that we often discover at customers is that many developers only work with one user, the sysdba, who has all privileges, defeating the aim of a secure system. Firebird, however, certainly offers one of the most flexible privilege systems, whether you utilize it or not. So, that was a brief introduction to the IBExpert user and grant managers. Thank you for taking the time to watch this film. We hope you've learned something new and will continue to view our forthcoming series of tutorials. Goodbye from all of us at IBExpert.